Alright folks, let's go live! Sorry about the delay, just had a few problems, a little hiccups, but we are live with Gathering the Roll, the tabletop news program. I probably look like crap, but we'll dive into this week's news of the tabletop world, going over a lot of different information. Hi Worm, welcome. So why don't we just dive into this week's news with the CCG binder. Let's not cut to the chase. Let's start out with some Magic news. We have 2 Magic releases and 1 tournament to talk about in our CCG binder. First off is From the Vault Transformation. The From the Vault series is a series of like 15 really decent cards put together in new art normally, foil versions of them all put together that you can check out now. This version of it has a bunch of transformation type cards. So since the original Innistrad block where Magic introduced the flip side Innistrad transformation cards, this is a collection of those. Some of the key and interesting ones that you can get, some of the more famous ones that people like. So if you're interested in checking this out, of course it is available now from the that you can get the From the Vault transformation. It does retail for around $35. So it is premium foil double-faced cards, 3 at least with new art. So also available, Explorers of Ixalan. So this is an interesting one because this is combining a board game and Magic the Gathering. So it contains 4 60-card decks, 50 map tiles, 20 double-sided tokens, 36 +1/+1 counters, 4 scout markers, 4 deck boxes, and a rules insert. The fact is, it's a version of Magic where you are playing and exploring an island at the same time. It's a $65 thing to get all of it. They do have deck lists online that if you wanted to check out what you get, you do get a lot of actual Magic cards. So it is like deck lists. You do get decks with these. That's the important thing about this entire setup is you get 60-card decks. You really do. You get 4 of them. And some of them have some pretty decent cards in them, so I can recommend definitely checking out what they have available. It does include a couple of mythics and a bunch of rares, each of the decks. So if you are definitely wanting to try something a little different with Magic, because it's a tile-based map that you explore while free-for-all multiplayer battling, it's definitely something a little different. So you can discover the Golden City first and be the first one to be the explorer of Ixalan. Alright, for tournament news for Magic, the World Cup is this weekend. 2017 World Cup, it's going to be taking place in France, in Ooh, I'm going to butcher this. It's Nice. Not nice. Oh, careful one there. So it is a team-based, and it will be Ixalan team sealed and team unified standard constructed, both over the weekend. The team compositions are going to be 3-person teams throughout the tournament. Tournament length, of course, will be pretty long. It's going to be throughout the couple of days, being the different rounds, with some playoffs. So, you know, this is, of course, the big world event. You can root for your team. You can watch it on Twitch. You know, as an American, hi, I'm Funny One. I would definitely say go Team America, though I haven't checked out all the teams for this year, so maybe there's a team out there from another country that you might want to still root for, because it's got some interesting players on it. So, definitely, I would check it out this weekend on Twitch, on Magic's Twitch channel. You can check out the 2017 World Cup. Let's move on, though, from our CCG binder. We do have some RPG bookshelf news. Let's move on to, of course, Starfinder first. A Starfinder flip map's out. Spaceship. It's pretty simple. It's a flip map of a spaceship that you can flip to either side. You can pilot, explore, or raid, both in that kind of order. You could pilot this spaceship. You can explore with this. You could raid another. You could be raiding this spaceship. So it is a double-sided gaming map with a sleek explorer vessel on one side and a military dropship on the other side. So you definitely get a lot of variety in your zooming in on the spaceship combat. So it's effectively, if you're not doing the overlay of spaceship combat on the hex grid for Starfinder, you're zooming into the ship, doing various things there. Now you can do that with your flip map, that you can just use this as a generic ship that your crew has. Alright, also out though, we have some Pathfinder news. Talador the First Empire. So, Talador was, of course, the first and largest empire in all of Galarian history. And this is a, basically, book all about them. They had 6 millennia of history, and they were a breath of a content before a, basically, horrible event called the Earthfall occurred and devastated and destroyed them. And they were spread across Galarian in many ways. So there's many forgotten and buried things about this culture that you can unearth using this book here. So it's a gazetteer, I'm probably butchering that also, of the major prefectures and provinces, major cities, reigning nobles that were during the time period, overview of the government, its relationships with the other empires at the time, because it wasn't the only empire at the time, it was just the greatest empire at the time, a dozen venture sites of Talador's past glories, and basically some of the ruined cities, lost valleys of dead, some new monsters that adapt for life in Talador, or basically looking into the past of it. This is an interesting one because both you could use it to, in your normal Pathfinder game set in the, in quotations, modern times, but you could also then have, you could have adventures back in the past, back in Talador if you wanted to. And because the current adventure path is going to be using Talador as a setting, War of the Crown, that one's going to be coming out soon, this might be something to check out. So that's a very interesting one, and it takes a different direction for your Pathfinder games. So also out is a new pawn box, a more interesting pawn box, Traps and Treasures. Most of the pawn boxes that we've seen now are, of course, things from the bestiary, monsters. Monsters, creatures, NPCs that you're going to fight against. Here's a collection of 100 pawns that are going to be printed on their normal cardstock, set up normal, but it's effectively a mixture of traps, common ones that you can mark off, and items that you can find. So this is a way that you can put little things on your maps. Now, of course, it's got a lot of simple pawns like barrels, crates, holes, lava, mold, rubble, things that you can put onto your chests and stuff. A lot of simple things. But you also have, it's true, it's a great way of adding political drama in any game. But this has also got a lot of things of like other objects that you can have for trapped. Think of it this way. This is your object pawns. So that if you're building a map and you don't have anything else to represent the various bookshelves, beds, everything else that you're going to be putting around on your map, this is a maybe way that you can show off, hey, these are things you've noticed that you can search, that maybe having traps on them, maybe don't. You can just throw them down on your map, and it'll be a very interesting way of doing pawns. So that's an interesting thing to check out. A different type of pawn for your pawn box collection. But let's move on from Pathfinder, though. I do want to talk a little bit about Shadowrun, because something new came out from Shadowrun. Yep, they've had a new book that came out, and it's Dark Terrors. Ooh, let me get a drink here. So there's many horrible things and mysteries in the corners of the Sixth World. That's very easy to describe. And the basic setting is that the sun went down in Barrow, Alaska, and it's not going to be seen until the 22nd of January. So this is the time where things go bump in the night, you could freeze, it's dark, it's terrible. And in this darkness, and the dark alleys are terrible enough. You know, you've got bug spirits, things that claim dead bodies, hidden quarters of the metal plane, and this is horrors lurking from below the surface. You know, because the sun went down, and that was actually what happened in reality. Sun went down in Barrow, Alaska, it's not going to come up. So this kind of inspired Catalyst games. They were inspired by the fact that you can go into that dark time in places like Alaska, and you don't have to get sunlight for so long. So it's got plot hooks, critter updates and critter stats, and campaign information for bringing a little bit of the dark terrors of the night that could be hidden somewhere. And this is not just in your normal reality. They also include stuff for metaplanes, basically if you're using magic, and the Matrix that you can throw together. There are dark shadows everywhere, and this works with Shadowrun 5th edition, or if you're using the simplified Anarchy rules. Alright, let's move on though. Onyx Path has brought us a new Vampire 20 Dark Ages book, Legacy of Lies. It's basically to help you jumpstart your Vampire Dark Ages in the V20 universe setting. It's got some basic rules for players and storytellers, introduction to the Dark Ages V20 campaign setting, some introductory adventures, character information for players and storytellers. So it's got a bunch of stuff ready for you to set up that if you're wanting to dive into Dark Ages Vampire, which is a different beast entirely from your modern day version of it, and you want to basically get a little bit of a jump start on it, this might be a way then to dive deeper into the V20 Dark Ages book. It's a starting point, and it might help you out if you've never done any kind of Dark Ages book before, and you're a fan of the V20 series. Alright. So we do, of course, have another role-playing game that just came out. The Awaken core book has just been released. So the good thing about Awaken here, it is a dark fantasy role-playing game. This here is a Kickstarter, or was a Kickstarter, and now it's coming available to the general public. So those of us out there that didn't know when it was a Kickstarter, didn't support it, now we can get it though. So it's always a good news when you can hear stuff like this. So you're becoming a vassal in Awakened. You're joining a battle against the darkness. There's political struggles, discovering basically the price of retaining humanity in a very ruthless and dark world. Since this is a dark, war-ravaged fantasy settings, it's influenced by Slavic and Mediterranean folklore, some with kind of forgotten mythologies resurfacing here in this world, and humanity having to deal with it. So it's a complete game system. It's got light rules that are just going to help you put it. It's basically should have streamlined character creation guidelines for both you as the player and all. For the questions for the Dark Ages, most of the clans do exist in Dark Ages, but some clans are a little different, and there are some clans that don't exist in the modern day that exist in the Dark Ages. You actually can look up a lot of that information online. Yes. But the standard 7 or so clans do exist in the Dark Ages. Those things like the Bruja/Bruja exist in different form. All the others, though, your Malkavians, your Tremere, your Ventru, they all do. And the Sabbat clans, too. Plus things like the Salubre. The Tremere are new because they're just screwed over the Salubre, basically, in this time period. So it's things like that. Giovanni are new because they've just screwed over the Cappadocians. Though you can play, depending on the time period, you could put yourself before or after either of these events. You'd be playing before the Tremere were formed, before the Giovanni were formed, and then you've got the Salubre and the Cappadocians instead. But, yep. I hope that answers your question, Unfunny One, and anybody's questions out there about Dark Ages Vampire that might not have known about it. But anyway, back to Awaken. It, of course, is out now, and you can get the core rulebook PDF for $20, or you can get a premium hardcover for $50 if you want to order it now. And they do have an opportunity that you can get the PDF and the hardcover together for the same price, so you're saving a little money there if you want both of them. All right. So there's 2 Mindjammer releases that came out. Mindjammer being Mophidius' system using, I think it's the Savage Lands system, I believe, off the top of my head. Forgive me if I'm not forgetting that right. So for 10 British pounds, you can get, of course, Enhance the Commonly Space Schematic. It is a poster map. Whew. You can get the PDF, of course, now, but you can also pre-order the physical copy for shipping pretty much this week in December. Yeah, you're welcome, Unfunny One. So the commonality of humanity is a sphere of stars 3,000 light years in diameter, centered on the old system of Manhome and Old Earth. There's 27 sectors of 100,000 worlds, greatest civilization of humanity ever known. And this is a star map of the commonality, showcasing its stellar regions, stellar capitals, fargates, capitals, more. It's a lot of stuff for it.
New citizen of the Empire.
Oh, Unfunny One, thank you for the subscription. I hope you enjoy Failure. DM Failure. So this is basically a big schematic you can get to help you with your Mindjammer. Works with the core books, works with the player's guide. You can get it in PDF format, of course, as I say, as a JPEG desktop wallpaper that you can get. So if you want a big map of the Mindjammer universe, hey, this is a way to do it now. But the other release is the Mindjammer Player's Guide. Something that seems so simple, but it hasn't actually come out yet. That's one of those things about it. So it's, if you're doing Mindjammer, this of course is to work with the Mindjammer role-playing game system, which you could get. It's all the rules you need to create and play characters in Mindjammer. You could even play Sentient Starship with the rules in the Player's Companion. It's got some description and histories of the commonalities of humanity. It's got some star maps, homeworlds, genotypes, extra rules from Mindjammer. This is all what you're going to need to work along with it. The Mindjammer, the core book, has a lot of the things you need. But if you're a player, this might help you enhance your playing style, add some stuff to your Mindjammer games, give you some more options that you might want to do. As I said, you could play a Sentient Starship and be going along with a crew, filling you up. So this might be a way for you to check it out. Mindjammer is a very interesting, stellar-based sci-fi RPG. So if you want to expand your abilities now, this might be a great way to do that. So, Mindjammer, the core is out. But let's move on, though, because we do have some card game desk. We're going to move on to our card game desk, because that was our RPG news. First off, as it's been going, Legend of the Five Rings continues to put out some packs, some small expansions for your Legend of the Five Rings card game. Or, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a Legend of the Five Rings card game. So the Chrysanthemum Throne is a Dynasty pack that's just come out this week. And trust me, Fantasy Flight put out a whole bunch of stuff this week, so this is just one of more. There's a valuable new Imperial Favor. The Ruby Champion is out. There's things about stealing favor. This is all about favor in your Legend of the Five Rings game. And kind of, it's combining with the Forbidden City that, hi Muffins, that I'll be talking about in a second. Because 2 packs came out this week. This is the 4th of the packs that have come out in the Dynasty series. So, yeah, this is all, we're expanding upon the Imperial cycle that they've been talking about. It's got 3 copies of 20 new cards that are expanding upon the various themes that you're going to have in the core set. So, yeah, it's all about favor in the Imperial Crown. We'll talk about the other one in a second because I did these in order of release. But next off from Fantasy Flight is, of course, an Arkham Horror the card game release. The Unspeakable Oath. Oh yeah, that sounds so pleasant. It's the newest Mythos path. It's for the Path to Carcosa cycle in the game. It is, of course, available now. It's equipped with 2 copies of 12 different player cards, including updated versions of few familiar cards, and entirely new cards that you can play with as a part of your scenario, the Path to Carcosa, or you can use these sort of set alone for part of standalone adventures. So this is your trip to the Asylum, and it might be beneficial to your health. Well, it might not be. And madness, of course, usually takes its toll on you, especially in any kind of Arkham Horror game. You're gonna know what's going to happen. So there's things like lunatics you're gonna fight, other monsters. You're gonna maybe form some alliances with some patrons, plenty of new items. If you want to expand your Arkham Horror games, if you want to expand your path to Carcosa's cycle of the gameplay, this is a Mythos pack for you to check out now. Oh, here's the other Dynasty pack from Legend of the Five Rings, the card game, Into the Forbidden City. So this one also came out this week, technically. So this is all about going to the Forbidden City. It's introducing the Kataka family, the Daimyo Kataka Yoshi. So it's including more powerful characters for your Legend of the Five Rings group. And it's got 6 political skills for this family. So this is the 3rd Dynasty pack, technically. Ooh. It's about drawing some cards, getting some things set up. It's about history, tradition, contesting favor once again. So this works with the other pack we talked about, all about this favor in the dynasties, and things like tests of courage and various other cards that you can combine together to enhance your Legend of the Five Rings experience. So this is again the 3rd Dynasty pack, which goes off the 4th Dynasty pack, the Chrysanthemum Throne, which we were talking about, for just some extra confusion. Woo! So we also have Game of Thrones, the card game. Fantasy Flight threw out a lot of things this week. We have the Archmeister's Key. So this is the 4th cycle of their card game. So this is available now in your local retailer, or you can get it online. Your journey through the events of the Feast of Crowns begins in this pack. It has the bestow keyword, which I believe I talked a little bit about the previous time in the Game of Thrones card game, that they expanded the possibilities of it, but there's new rewards for forging alliances between 2 factions in a single deck. Traditionally, they aim for more having your deck be just one faction. You could have multiple factions. This is giving you opportunities that having 2 factions together in one deck works together more and better. Yep. So it's got things like the Captain of the Stormcrows out in it. It's all about your fickle allies, skills with arms, bringing up together some mercenaries, and bringing together your faction in Game of Thrones to be the best one of the all. So it's got allies, champions, mercenaries, and more. So if you are a friend of the Game of Thrones card game, or even just a fan of Games of Thrones, you might want to check out both the original game and this chapter pack too. Alright, let's move on from our card game desk to our board game pile with some more Fantasy Flight. It is a deck building card game. Just like the Legend of the Five Rings is a deck building card game, it is another one. Fantasy Flight's very good at putting out those types of card games. The question of how to think about it is a good one there, Muffins. I would say if you're a big fan and you like some kind of deck building type card games, it might be something for you to check out. That's the best way I can talk about it. But, yep. And they have their 2nd edition out now for 2 to 4 players, if you're interested in the original card game and checking it out, beyond the expansions. Anyway, let's talk about another Game of Thrones product, Game of Thrones Catan, or Catan, because that's something that came out. So if you like Settlers of Catan and you like Game of Thrones, you might like this. It's taking some influence of it. It's for 3 to 4 players. You're in the realm of Westeros, of course. The Brotherhood of the Night's Watch is in peril. Resources are depleting. Wildlings are pressing the north. The Order is divided by infighting. There are various groups that seek successors. So you have to build sort of like... you've been assigned sections of the wall to maintain, you and your rivals. And you're given control of some roads and settlements that are there. And you're preserving the wall, preserving everything that's going on there, while trying to seek, I guess, the control over all the region and becoming the top person there. So you are earning victory points. They've got their own cards you're going to be using, your own versions of building with terrain tiles. It's, again, it's a little bit of Catan, and a little bit of Game of Thrones all combined together that you're building up together. So if you are, again, a big fan of Settlers of Catan and a fan of Game of Thrones, you might want to check this out to see how they've done well in combining the concepts of the two of these together into one game. So, let's move on to the last of Fantasy Flight's releases, Legacy of Dragonholt. Alright, so, this is all about, you received a message from an old friend pulling you back from a newly peaceful life into adventures. So that sounds like a really good way for a role-playing game to open it up. You know, you've retired, you're now coming back into it, and that's where your journey begins in Legacy of Dragonholt. It is a narrative kind of adventure game style that's supposed to blend aspects of... the Catan one would be its own theme game, I would say, with unique rules based upon you doing... it's its own theme version of it with its own things. Similar to things like, was it Star Trek Catan was a theme version of it with its own unique sets of rules. This is a theme version of it with its own unique sets of rules, trying to bring in the aspects of the Game of Thrones universe into your Catan games, melding them well. Whether it's a successful melding or not, I would say it's up to you. Play the game a little bit and test it out. But anyway, so Legacy of Dragonholt is trying to blend aspects of adventure games, role-playing games, open-world video games, and choose-your-own-adventure books. Yeah, it's not about winning or losing, but rather creating the story for it. It does not need a game master, of course, because it is more of a board game, and you're playing to a degree against the board. You're going to set out adventures, and try to become someone. So you'll play as 1 to 6 humanoid races that they have. Of course, there's humans, elves, dwarfs, orcs, gnomes, and catfolks. You'll select a class. You'll have personality traits, some history. Yeah, so you're kind of building a little bit of a character in this one. And you have your own unique character to a degree then that you're going to be diving into these narrative adventures for. There are 6 kind of encounter adventures that are provided in the thing here that you'll be going on, and you'll be playing together as a group. So it's putting yourself into this story kind of driven game. Definitely an interesting take on gameplay, since it is a narrative adventure game. I put it here in the board game section because it is sort of its own unique thing. It's 1 to 6 players. As again, you build your own heroes, you go through a narrative kind of game that's not quite a role-playing game, not quite a board game, not quite anything else. It's something a little different. And you might want to check it out now because it is a very interesting kind of game. $60, and it does have some opportunities for replayability, of course, with having different characters, different kind of adventures, and different sets of players to do it. And you're on your way to Dragonholt. Alright, let's of course move on, though. We do have a game that's technically been out, but has a remastered version now available. Through the Desert. So the game about traveling through the deserts, through the brutal conditions of Sahara, forging the forest environments, through the shifting sands. It's effectively a modern classic where you're traveling through very simple gameplay. You know, you're trying to go through the desert and survive. And the desert is the entire board that you're going to be going off. And you're a merchant braving the sands, trying to get your spices, wheat, gold, salt, other various goods from parts of the West to parts of North Africa, surviving various tribes that might come after you as you transport them, having your caravans dive deeper into it, discovering watering holes, oases that might help you going. And this is a remastered version of it, updated, a little bit of new look, kind of fixing things up that you can get out now. Remastered versions, of course, yes, available now. Alright, so we don't have anything for our party game closet this week, unfortunately. Tears to the eyes. Though we do have a party game in our Kickstart display. So why don't we dive into that, our Kickstart display, to look at this week in Kickstarters. There isn't a huge amount of them, but we do have a couple of them. So first off is Flash Gordon. It's for the Savage Worlds system. It's the so you're using Savage Worlds as your official way of doing it. So it's a setting book for Savage Worlds. That's the way of doing it. And it's the Flash Gordon RPG. So, I mean, you could rock out to the Freddie Mercury Flash Gordon from Queen, watching the 1980s one, or the original. It depends on where you want to do for the sci-fi. They announced it at Gen Con in 2015, originally. And what they were working on. And now they've reached a certain point in time that, bringing apart, of course, the original strips of Flash Gordon, the 1980s movie, all the definitive resources from it, they're bringing it to Kickstarter now. So it has been funded. They have been funded nearly 5 times their original goal. They're reaching 74,000. They are approaching 75. They have 6 days to go. So, I mean, if you're a fan of all the old Flash Gordon stuff, this might be something for you to check out. You can get just the Flash Gordon RPG for 20 for supporting them. You can get a lot more of their books that they're going to be coming out with and special things for 45. So there's a couple levels of support you might want to get now. Sorry. Getting a drink is always a good thing when you're going on about a lot of this. They have things like giving players cliffhanger tokens that you can use to have cliffhanger events. Little bits of their own systems to make things a little bit more interesting and bring a little fresh take to your Savage World systems. Things like conviction chips. They have the book The Kingdoms of Mongo, which you can come out with. So they have the core book of Flash Gordon, a Kingdoms of Mongo that gives you a definitive information about everything to do with Flash Gordon's, well, the world that it's basically set upon. A collector's box that you can look into getting. They have had a bunch of the stretch goals. Character folios, combat charts, archetypes, minis, threat cards, maps of Mongo, more minis, supplements, the printed cliffhanger cards. Bookmarks is the next one that they're going to do. And then Flash Flats at 80,000, 90,000, and they have 100,000 stuff that you can all get a lot of really interesting stuff all out now. You can have some add-ons for hardcover versions of the books, a lot of different things to do. So, I mean, there's a lot of options here. If you're a big fan of Flash Gordon and, you know, you like some interesting pulp sci-fi series and settings, this might be something for you to check out now. And it is funded, so you have 6 days to choose to pop in and join the funding. Alright, let's talk about another Kickstarter. This one is a party game. It's a would you rather kind of party game. Because life is all about choices. There are plenty of choices. Fries or salad, left or right, sandals or boots. You know, that's what they kind of say. So there's burning questions inside all of us to answer, and they're trying to give you a way to express this. Would you rather, you know, have various different things? So it's or. Whew. It's made for modern people. It's a would you rather style gameplay for modern people that expose you and your friends to morals, different things. There's 9 game types to choose from, each tailored to different gaming experience. So there's a lot of availability there. So it is 17 days to go. It is about a 10th of the way funded yet. So they've just started in their way. They do offer free shipping. And it's built to set up that you have various different combinations of cards that would you rather do this or that. So for a pledge of $40 Australian, you can get, which is about $30 US, you can get 1 set of it. So if this interests you as a party game, you can check it out now. Let's talk about another Kickstarter out, a board game. Trade and War. With 21 days to go, Trade and War has reached approximately also a 10th of their funding that they were looking for. So it's Trade and War Ancient Mediterranean. It's a strategy game where you're exploring, expanding exploiting and exterminating the competition. You play as a ruler of an ancient civilization, Carthage, Egypt, Greece, or Rome, where you're expanding your empire to win the game. You use trade resources, build ships, caravans, legions. You improve your cities with buildings like ports, trade posts, barracks, walls, perhaps wonders of the world, which give you a great advantage over everyone else. And specifically, you have event cards. You win, lose battles with other cities, ships, caravans. You're basically trading with other people. There's a lot of expansion on basically building up an ancient empire and becoming the greatest of all the empires with their own unique engines in the game, and various resources that you're going to be using to combine to build out. So this might be a resource gathering game that you might want to check out if you're interested in them, if you like that type of game. And, you know, you will have a love-hate relationship with all the other empires, of course, because you might want to trade with them for certain things, but you might also be going to war at some point in time in order to defeat them. So Trade and War is, of course, up on Kickstarter now. Alright, Fields of Valeria. So it is a high fantasy expandable card game where they're trying to have MOBAs meet trading card games. So a little bit of like the League of Legends stuff, if you've played that, bringing into a game more closer to Magic the Gathering. So it is 23 days to go on this one, and they are over a quarter of the way they're funding. It's meant to be 2 to 6 players for this game. So it's a head-to-head fantasy card game that draws a lot of the inspiration from things like what trading card tabletop game would I compare it to? Would I compare the Trade and War to? I think I would compare that from looking at that. It feels like it's bringing in a little bit of some Risk style play combined with things like Settlers for some resource building. So it's taking on a lot of different aspects there, from just the appearance of it, with its own unique systems, because you are doing both war and trade and expansion of empires built together. It's hard to give a great one that exactly encompasses all that, because it's taking aspects of a lot of different games and putting them all together. And that's, I think, why it's a little bit unique in a way. Does it all work together? That's a hard thing to say for any of these games, and that's something you have to look into when you research the Kickstarter. Because I'm just giving you guys a basic overview of the Kickstarters. I would definitely recommend you check them out for yourselves, see if you're interested in them, do a full research. Most of them have videos and stuff that you can look at, the full gameplay. Some of them have rules books that you can check out, that you can read through, and see if it's really something you want to get behind. Anyway, that's why it's like, it's an interesting looking game. I would definitely say that. Whether or not I personally would get it or not, that's something I haven't fully been able to answer yet. So, back to Fields of Valeria. You're building a deck, you're filling it with heroes, minions, gear, and everything you want to sort of put together. Tons of cards, bringing you to roads to victory. And you're strategically pushing through 3 lanes of combat in order to destroy your opponent's core. So, yeah. It's very League of Legends. It's very Heroes of the Storm. Very MOBA. Definitely. And they've been working on it for 8 years, so that's an interesting thing. Players construct a deck of 50 cards together. And your heroes, minions, gear, wards, fortifications, actions, and abilities will all be affecting these 3 fields and core that represent that bases. So each of you will have 3 fields and a core. They're going to use their commands each turn to control their armies and cards in play, maneuver them back and forth, trying to gain momentum to push forward to crush their opponents until you get their hero's core down to 0. So this is really MOBA in card game form. That's the easiest way to describe it. So they do have 55 heroes and master heroes, and it's a full set of 270 cards that you're going to be building out of. And it is a trading card game that they're building here. So that's an important part of it. You're building a core field, staging area, a deck, and you draft 3 heroes from their deck, starting with the player who goes first, and you reveal it, play it near your core. Once all heroes have been drafted, you begin the game, and it has its own sets of things. So, without going into too many details about the actual style of gameplay, we can see here that this is definitely a MOBA and trading card game. For a $5 pledge, you get a PDF version of the game, full PDF version of it. For $20, you get the full PDF plus a 60-card sampler deck, wallpapers. $45, you get the full PDF versions, 10 tokens, rules cards, digital copies, and a Fields of Lore core set. So you do get a bunch of things of the actual gameplay as you subscribe to it. Now, the best thing I can say about this one is if you are a fan of MOBAs, and you also do games like Magic the Gathering, this might be something for you to get here, because it's a customizable card game, of course, that combines the best elements of a MOBA with some deck management, with your board that you have in front of you, that you can play against people. And it is made for multiple players, so you don't just... Well, it's made for head-to-head. But you can do from 2 to 6 players. So you can have more players than just one-on-one for 2, and you just have to sort of throw it out together there. So it's an interesting thing to check out that's combining a type of video game that I have seen but haven't played of. So that's a little bit of information about me. Haven't played any MOBAs myself yet. That maybe you want to check it out now. See if it would truly interest you. Alright, let's move on though. To Battle of Kursk. It is a... Kursk was the largest tank battle the world had ever seen. It was the German war machine being halted by the Russians. A turning point in history, because this means that Russia was able to basically turn the tide and start fighting back against Germany. We're talking World War II, of course, here. So it's a strategic game where you take control of either the Germans or Russians, maneuver your units around a hex board to either have the Soviets prevail again, or maybe you're going to have history rewritten and Germany is going to be successful. So, 22 days to go. They're funded. They aren't funded by a huge amount. Well, I mean, they're about like 33% more funded. Yeah, a little more than 33% more. So it has friendly shipping to Australia, European, and Canada. So if you're in the US, a little sorry there. They do have a bunch of stretch goals and add-ons for the game that they are putting together. So let's grab some extra. So you're going to be using action cards, their own unique dice system, firing systems for shooting at each other, that you're going to use to basically have war as you move your tanks and maneuver them against your opponent's tanks with the hope to defeat them and win the war. Their stretch goals are going up to 20. Oh wow, they've gotten a whole bunch of their... They're working on their stretch goals. Bonus action cards are the first one. If they hit 25, which is the next one. They do have stretch goals adding up all the way to 36,000 if they hit that, which there's a complete boxed expansion. They do have some add-ons like exclusive dice, a strategy guide, things like that. So yeah, been funded. This is definitely a more two-player game that you're going to be playing it out in a hex-based system where it's capturing a pretty substantial battle in World War II and putting it together into a hex grid kind of little card game where you use these little like square cards to represent your various units you're going to be battling it out with in this famous battle where you're trying to change and stem the tide. Are you going to stick with Russia and, you know, continue time as normal, or win as the Germans? We're not talking political allegiances here, because both the Soviets and the Nazi Germany both had some bad things about them. We're talking about just recreating a historical battle. okay? Alright, let's move on. Master Suites card game. Let's move from war to desserts. So, this one's another one that's funded. At 7 days to go, they have approximately gotten about 33% above their funding. They didn't have a huge funding. So it's a delicious card game where you are a chef and you have to know when to switch on the oven. You know what you need to create what you need. 15 to 30 minutes of gameplay for 1 to 5 players for fast and fun with some great, very simple game mechanic. Yeah, Desert War is the only war for you. Well, you know, Worm, when they come out with the Desert War, World War II game, which they might actually have, you can get it. So, they have 4 variants of it. They have a Master Suites, which is a competitive, Clash of Suites, which is a player elimination, Suite Workshop, which is a competitive game style, and Lonely in the Kitchen, which is a solo game style. 16 role cards that you take. Things like a chemist, fortune teller, thief, geisha, there's a whole bunch of different roles that you can have taking here. Yes, 90 ingredient cards, 15 special cards, and of course a rule book that will be having it. And as I said, they have 4 variants on gameplay that you can have, that you can check out. They do have a role book. Desert War is the only one. I have to share with you. There you go. Got some fails in chat if you got it, I guess. They will have a print and play version. They will have actual physical versions for backers. They have a rule book available if you want to check it out. You can get multiple copies of the game, of course. They are funded. They do have some stretch goals with things like new special cards, a new role card that they're hoping to put out. It's definitely a European-friendly release that's coming out now. So if you're in Europe, so I guess Ollie, if he really wanted this, this would be something for him. He likes shows like this. This might be a board game for him. Friend of the channel and artist, Ollie. Anyway, so Master Suites, it's funded. You can check it out now. So we have one more Kickstarter out, Core Space, a sci-fi miniature skirmish game. Now, granted, I will confess, I am one that doesn't know or play a lot of miniature-style games. But because this one is particularly sci-fi miniature skirmish game, I did want to bring out and talk about it. It is funded with 18 days to go. They have exceeded their goal, which was a pretty hefty goal. So battle systems are known for their awesome terrains, for, you know, miniatures battle systems, for their great, you know, little miniatures, for their interesting action that you can have. So Core Space is a fully modular, 3-dimensional board game for 1 to 6 players. You take on missions and campaigns. It's a miniatures-based game, of course. Each of your characters can be leveled up with new skills and equipments that help with missions. You play using a unique real search system, they call it. You advance your characters between games. It's supposed to have setup that's fast, easy to do, compatible with other battle system terrain products. So if you do have other battle systems, you will need to win using the following trade credos: salvage, trade, adapt, and survive. This is a little different than Warhammer 40k, so I'm going to say that just by the system of it. Warhammer 40k is an insane one that I will not dive into the depths of ever. This is a little bit more miniatures game meets board game from the feel of it. So they do have rules available now. It is... What kind of money system is that? Converted from... What are we talking about here? Oh, British pounds. God, wow. 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 It's British. It's in British. So it's British pounds. I gotta get better at money symbols for talking about these. Anyway, for 45 pounds or $60 US. You can choose a cyberpunk terrain or combination of add-ons at $45. You don't get free stretch goal pledges. At 75 £8, you get the core space boxed game, all stretch goals. That's $104 US. After the campaign ends, shipping charges will be added. You can add on the core full game. That's an early bird. There is a late bird too. There's a Titan pledge where you get a lot of expansions and stuff. There's a lot to this game. Let me put it that way. They've got really cool looking miniatures that they will be providing you within. Three-dimensional sets up. Yeah, that look really kind of awesome, because you're going to have sort of a board game you're establishing, and you're going to put walls and stuff together. So it's very Warhammer in the way that you set it up, except it's a very sci-fi feeling rather than creating terrains. It's specifically supposed to be like a map of buildings and stuff. So very cool. So if you are a friend of miniature style games, this might be something for you to check out now. But anyway, let's drop that out of the way. So thank you all for joining me today for Gathering the Roll. We've gone over the news of the week. If you have any questions about them, of course, you can toss it into chat. As we've seen, some of chat has tossed it in. For those of you that might have had those questions on the YouTube side when the VOD goes up later on today. If you do have any other questions, you can catch me on my Twitter. You can always send me there, on my Discord, both which are linked in below me here at both YouTube. It will be in the description, and below me here on Twitch. If you want to also leave it in the description, just a comment on the YouTube side. I'll answer all the questions best I can, any more of them. You can also check me, send me an email at discussingtabletop@yahoo.com. Send a message to Joe or Worm if you want to contact us about questions when we talk about some of these topics on Discussing Tabletop. If it's something a little more involved in your questions, that's also another place you can reach us. We love answering questions there. I'll be back again next week, back to the normal. Actually, I might be starting a little later next week because I'm going to be trying to get some morning gameplay daily, and that means I want to have at least a little bit more extra time for setting up Gathering the Roll. I'll let you guys know on Twitter if I'm going to be at the normal noon time or if I'm going to push it back to 1 o'clock for Gathering the Roll. That will be the only change if I start morning gaming streams. Just like hour and a half I'm trying to plan out. But so, let me